Welcome to Part 2 of CATH's UDL Guidelines Explained, the what of learning. As a quick review, research has identified 3 brain networks involved in learning. The recognition network is the one involved with the what of learning, how we recognize, interpret, and understand information. Diversity in our recognition networks refers to how we recognize and understand information differently, which feels instinctively correct. We often self-identify that we need to see information visually or hear it audibly to better follow along and understand. The icons pictured here illustrate some of the ways that we can recognize and understand content. There's an open book because straightforward text is one format. A megaphone is pictured to represent speech or audio to share information. We have an easel with a few letters to show a presentation style approach in which someone is explaining verbally with text on the board. There's a page with both images and text to show that the combination can be effective. This is why most textbooks have a lot of illustrations. And there's a computer screen to represent how information can be presented in a variety of formats, including videos and voice threads like this one. For each student, some of these formats serve as barriers while others are strengths. Because of that diversity, it's important to provide multiple means of representation. CAST breaks this down into 3 areas: providing options for perception, providing options for language, mathematical expressions, and symbols, and providing options for comprehension. We're going to dig into each of these a bit deeper next. We'll start off with options for perception. The first item listed here is not as much in your hands as the instructor, but is more relevant to the software tools that we use. Both Canvas and Zoom, as well as many other tools, have customizable displays. Students can control items like high contrast color schemes or resizing the boxes in a Zoom conference to better fit the way that they can perceive the information. More within your control are the next 2 items, providing alternatives for audio and for video. If you use podcasts, video clips, infographics, etc., be sure to provide transcripts or captioning for students who don't recognize audio information well. In part 1 of this presentation, you might have noticed that I described the images in the spectators by a fence illustrations. This way, students who have a visual impairment or just don't recognize or understand imagery very well can still get the necessary information. Next, we have options for language, mathematical expressions, and symbols. And really, that's kind of all under the umbrella of language, since math and symbols are a form of language in a way. We don't all interpret language the same way, and I'm not just talking about non-native English speakers, though they are an example. We don't all have the same vocabulary. We don't all have the same understanding of idioms or symbols. Words have different connotations for different people, so it's important to clarify your definitions, provide examples, and whenever possible, illustrate your meaning in other ways, like with body language and visuals. That segues us naturally into the final strategy, providing options for comprehension. To help students understand the information that you present, you need to consider activating or providing some background knowledge. Consider that students come from different cultural backgrounds, have different experiences, different generations, etc. You might need to provide additional information for context. For example, when working in a college writing center, I often used Disney movies in my examples for literary analysis. But this isn't universally accessible if I don't provide some of the basics of those films as they relate to the concept, because not all students are familiar with Disney movies or respond well to films as an analysis tool. Also, consider scaffolding your comprehension by highlighting patterns and relationships, using visuals, offering examples, because what leads to that aha moment will be different for different learners. Let's look at some practical examples. Throughout this presentation, I've been using anchor visuals, meaning that I am using illustrations that anchor or emphasize the key meaning of my text and explanation. This slide shows the checking of a box with a pencil beside it, which correlates to my earlier to-do list image, which was on the slide on which I listed the strategies for providing multiple means of representation. This image shows that we're now checking off those strategies in our concrete examples. Now, that image may be unimportant to you. You might not even have noticed it. But for those who recognize and interpret images more easily than they do text or audio, this helps increase comprehension. Another example is to consider revising or augmenting any culturally based analogies or examples, such as the one I discussed earlier regarding Disney movies. And much earlier in the presentation, I mentioned the importance of providing transcripts for videos and infographics. That's another practical way to align your instruction with UDL strategies. Your turn. What experiences have you had with providing multiple means of representation? What challenges have you faced, or what challenges do you see as potential barriers to using this strategy? Has this presentation sparked any ideas for future course revision? Here's where we'd like to hear your input.